December 26, 1997, during the early morning hours in East Bremerton, Washington, a neighbor notices smoke coming from the Hacheney residence and alerts the other neighbors. It doesn't take too long before a 911 call is made and authorities rush their way to the scene. Authorities arrived and got the fire under control, only to then make a grueling discovery, which was accompanied by a smell of burning flesh that made them fear the worst. Inside, they unfortunately find the body of a 28-year-old woman who neighbors immediately recognize as that of Dawn Hacheney. Her husband, Nick Hacheney, had gone for a hunting trip with friends, and at around 10 a.m., he came back home with their dog only to find the house had been on fire and his wife had died as a result of it. Initially ruled as an accidental fire, a gruesome discovery would be made years later and would reveal that something far more sinister was behind it. This is the heartbreaking case of Dawn Hacheney. Dawn Marie Tienhara was born on December 5, 1969, in Seattle, Washington, to Donald Tienhara and Diana Parmel. Donald worked in a shipyard while Diana took care of the home. Dawn was their eldest child and only daughter, and together grew up with her three brothers, Dennis, Darren, and Derek, in Bremerton, Washington. According to her mother, her devoutness began at an early age, with her embracing faith and accepting the Lord into her life when she was 4 years old. Dawn faced hardships in her childhood due to her parents' struggles with anxiety and depression that would often lead to frequent conflicts. Around 1980, Diana met a new man, prompting her departure from the family to move in with him. This led to the arrival of another baby. However, the relationship hit a snag, forcing Diana, alongside her newborn, to return to Donald and her other children. Despite these childhood obstacles she faced, Dawn turned all her challenges into doing well in school, dedicating herself to achieving excellent grades. At just 12 years old, she had participated in the Scripps National Spelling Bee, an opportunity that not only led her to the White House, but also allowed her to meet the late former president, Ronald Reagan. In 1988, Dawn graduated and achieved the honor of being the valedictorian at Bremerton Christian School before joining the Northwest College of the Assemblies of God in Seattle. During her college years, she crossed paths with Nick Hacheney, and an instant connection sparked between them. However, concerns arose among Dawn's friends when she referred to Nick as the one after just a few dates. They hoped their friend would find a companion who embraced her with unwavering support and genuine affection, expressing apprehension about Nick as they perceived Nick as excessively assertive and overly self-assured, not aligning with Dawn's personality. Nick's upbringing paralleled Dawn's in some ways. He was born and raised in Washington, but unlike her, he hailed from Poulsbo, a coastal city in Washington. Nick also faced troubles within his family from a young age. His father, Dan, immersed in constant work as a mechanic, remained distant when home, neglecting family time and household responsibilities. Meanwhile, Sandra, his mother, juggled a home daycare and foster care, leaving Nick feeling neglected. He confided in friends, expressing a sense of being less favored than his siblings and even the foster kids, perceiving his mother's feelings toward him as hate. Struggling through his mother's prolonged bouts of depression and his emotionally distant father, Nick lacked emotional support or connection from his parents. Despite this isolation, Nick sought comfort in the Bible, finding solace and deepening his involvement in Christianity. While his faith bolstered his self-assurance during his adolescence, it occasionally distanced him from others due to his newfound confidence. Nick and Dawn crossed paths for the first time at their shared college. Dawn's friends found it strange that she would take an interest in Nick, given his opposite traits as mentioned earlier. With time, they began noticing a change in Dawn. She had always displayed confidence through her extrovert nature, was always self-sufficient, consistently driven and striving to conquer new goals. However, in Nick's presence, everything seemed to be the other way around. She became timid, withdrawn, and indecisive, frequently deferring to Nick's choices, even if they clashed with her preferences or made her uncomfortable. It appeared as though Nick had a negative influence on her, contrary to bringing out her best self. Despite this, their love endured, and their relationship persisted, eventually ending up in an engagement after Nick proposed on Alki Beach in 1990. They sealed their commitment with marriage on April 20th, 1991, subsequently moving back to Bremerton. At that point, both had completed their degrees. Don secured a position as a loan officer, while Nick embarked on his role as a youth pastor at Christ Community Church on Bainbridge Island, situated across the bay from Seattle. Nick had aspired to become a youth pastor, specifically targeting Christ Community Church due to his bond with his former youth pastor Bob, also known as P.B. Smith. At that time, P.B. Smith remained with the church, having overseen its affairs since the late 1980s, but had now partnered with Pastor Robert Billy Craig in guiding the congregation. P.B. Smith adopted a more amiable, yet conservative approach to church leadership, whereas Pastor Robert was known for his stringent and radical teachings. Throughout their marriage, Nick consistently made decisions without any opposition from Dawn. Why was that the case, though? Well, both Nick and Dawn adhered to Christian fundamentalism, a community where the wife is expected to submit to her husband's authority, believing it aligns with God's plan. At Christ Community Church, this ideology was explicitly promoted and deemed acceptable. The church even practiced exorcisms on afflicted members, advocated for families to have as many children as deemed by God, and endorsed homeschooling for these children. Their teachings emphasized women's modesty and addressed uncomfortable inquiries about sex. Speaking out against these norms risked excommunication from the church, fostering a climate of silence among dissenters, driven by fear of expulsion. Dawn and the congregation found themselves entrenched in what many would label a cult, with her husband Nick playing a pivotal role in the perilous practices. Nick had shifted his admiration toward Robert and sought direct mentorship under him, steering away from his initial close relationship with P.B. Smith. Dissatisfied with Smith's more relaxed approach, Nick felt he wasn't learning enough and disapproved of what he perceived as leniency, favoring the stringent and extreme methods of Pastor Robert. On the other hand, Robert viewed Nick as a means to accomplish his agenda, ousting Smith and assuming complete control as the senior pastor of the church. By 1997, Dawn and Nick had encountered home-related issues as they frequently relocated, residing in properties they refurbished to sell. Dawn yearned to establish a family and settle into a permanent residence. To address this, Nick found a fixer-upper in East Bremerton, intending for them to move in, renovate, and make it their home. However, the home purchase, renovations, and their house-flipping venture had pushed the couple into debt. Although their outward appearance showcased a seemingly flawless relationship, with Dawn portrayed as the supportive wife accommodating Nick's desires, underlying issues existed far beyond anyone's perception. Dawn had even made a request jokingly to a friend about potentially living with her instead of returning to her parents in case she and Nick ended their relationship. Meanwhile, Nick continued accumulating debt by regularly loaning money to fellow church members. He embarked on his ambitious venture, establishing a Christian youth camp. This endeavor, predictably, proved to be financially burdensome. However, fueled by his fervent desire, he fully committed to the project. He even began scouting properties in Jefferson County, convinced that one of these would serve as the perfect location for the camp. His determination intensified when a congregant, a woman named Sandy Glass, asserted receiving a divine vision, affirming that the property Nick had his eye on was destined to become the site of the youth camp he envisioned. Sandy Glass, who was in her 20s, had already faced considerable hardships in her life. Her first boyfriend had passed away due to an unspecified illness, while her father succumbed to a construction accident. Additionally, her brother battled with addiction. Sandy was married to a man named Jimmy. Their financial situation had been strained for some time. They relied solely on Jimmy's income as a carpenter, with Sandy staying home to care for their children. Similar to Nick, Sandy struggled with reckless spending habits, often exceeding their means, resulting in frequent arguments between her and Jimmy. These disputes sometimes led Jimmy to express his frustration through yelling or by withdrawing himself from the situation and spending hours at the bar. In a bid to address their marital conflicts, the couple sought help from the church and began attending marriage counseling sessions which were facilitated by Nick. At this point, Nick had served as the church's marriage counselor for several years. Many congregants had lodged complaints with Robert about Nick's counseling style, expressing discomfort over his tendency to focus predominantly on intimate inquiries, often dismissing other crucial issues. It appeared that discussions primarily revolved around matters of a sexual nature, neglecting other significant aspects. However, owing to the trust they had in P.B. Smith, who was still affiliated with the church, members presumed that Nick's role wouldn't be entrusted if he wasn't credible. However, by the fall of 1997, Pastor Robert had successfully displaced Smith, assuming the role of senior pastor, a decision fully endorsed by the church board. Smith and his wife then departed for Africa to engage in missionary work. Jimmy's parents, who were church attendees themselves, had viewed Sandy and Jimmy seeking church intervention as a hasty decision. They even questioned Nick's qualifications and experience in guiding their son's marriage. Their concerns deepened when Nick exhibited a conspicuous focus on Sandy individually rather than on the couple as a unit. This heightened attention extended beyond counseling sessions, leading to prolonged phone conversations and an excessive amount of time spent together both at church and even outside the church's surroundings. Jimmy's parents deemed the dynamic between Nick and Sandy as inappropriate, noting their extended interactions and increased closeness, which seemed to surpass the boundaries of a typical counselor-client relationship. Pastor Robert's wife, Pamela, had taken notice of Nick's conduct and had a private conversation with him, expressing concerns about his inappropriate behavior and advising him to focus on his own marriage. Following numerous complaints, Robert intervened, cautioning Sandy that her relationship with Nick was unacceptable and needed to cease. Sandy, feeling a sense of divine connection between her and Nick, reacted angrily to Robert's counsel. She wrote him a letter expressing her discontent, stating, "The judgment I feel from you makes it hard for me to believe that you accept my gifts at all, or that you have any confidence in my ability to hear God and use this to help anyone." The relationship between Sandy and Nick was already negatively impacting those around them. Don and Jimmy, along with his children from his marriage to Sandy, felt hurt. In fact, one of their children confided in Jimmy, revealing that Nick and Sandy had mentioned Nick becoming their new father when Jimmy died. At church, Dawn started sharing her distress with friends, revealing her financial turmoil and her earnest desire to have children, a wish Nick vehemently opposed. As 1997 drew to a close, Nick engaged in relationships with multiple women besides Sandy. He was seen engaging in private conversations and prolonged phone calls with these women. Simultaneously, Sandy's purported visions intensified, urging Nick to prioritize the establishment of his youth camp and to allocate more time to their relationship, as she believed they were destined to be together. Dawn, on the contrary, made numerous efforts to rekindle Nick's happiness with her, even going to the lengths of attempting to lose some weight. Certain women within the congregation endeavored to console her, affirming that the issues between her and Nick were not a result of her actions, but rather stemmed from Nick himself being the core problem. Regrettably, her life hadn't unfolded as she had envisioned when she entered into marriage with him. Fast forward to Christmas, Dawn woke up feeling under the weather. Despite being sick with a cold, she and Nick visited her family, spending the whole day together. Later, in the evening, they headed to P.B. Smith's residence, joining his family for some time. Plans were set for Nick to go hunting with Lindsay, Smith's daughter, and her friends the following morning. On the 26th, just before dawn, Nick met up with his companions at Hood Canal Bridge in Jefferson County for the hunting trip. After spending a few hours in the woods without firing a single shot, they decided to leave and headed to a local diner for breakfast around 9 a.m. While everyone was eating, Nick suddenly stood up, appearing concerned, and exclaimed, "Dawn and I haven't opened our Christmas presents." Around 9:30 a.m., Nick departed from the diner and returned home by 10 a.m., only to discover the tragic news of his wife's demise in a fire. Investigators revealed that the fire initially remained contained in the bedroom, sparked by a malfunctioning space heater. The inferno rapidly escalated due to the presence of newspapers and wrapping paper within the room, worsened by the multiple propane containers on the floor. Strangely, despite Nick informing his friends at the diner less than an hour earlier that they hadn't yet opened their Christmas gifts, he informed the authorities that they had indeed opened presents the previous night. He explained that due to Dawn feeling unwell, she retired to bed without tidying up the wrapping paper. Additionally, Nick claimed to have received the propane tanks as a Christmas gift. The couple's ongoing home renovations had led them to rely on space heaters during the winter. Back then, such heaters lacked the safety features seen in modern versions, which resulted in frequent fires and fatalities. Police found no discrepancies in Nick's account. Being a local pastor as well, Nick's standing in the community left law enforcement with no reason to suspect anything other than an accidental death for his wife. Concerned for their pastor's well-being, Nick's congregation sought ways to support him during what they believed was an immensely challenging time. Pastor Robert even proposed attempting to resurrect Dawn through prayer, but Nick declined, citing his wish to spare her any potential pain. This refusal surprised Robert, given Nick's prior willingness to engage in church activities, including the exorcisms they had previously attempted. Mary Glass, Sandra's mother-in-law, harbored immediate suspicions about Nick's involvement in Dawn's death, convinced it wasn't accidental. She urged her husband to approach the police, but this never materialized. Within days, Dawn's death was officially labeled accidental, and the Bremerton police relinquished the case to Nick's insurance company. Nick had already submitted a request to process Dawn's life insurance policy. Family and friends found it peculiar that Nick was dealing with the life insurance so swiftly after Dawn's passing. However, considering the couple's substantial debt and Nick's aspirations for the youth camp, they rationalized his urgency for the money. Some church members found Nick's grieving methods rather unusual, but they refrained from expressing concerns, assuming that everyone copes differently with grief. The church community organized a celebration of life event, serving as Dawn's funeral, where family and friends gathered to share stories and commemorate her life amid their sorrow. Nick remained entirely composed throughout the funeral, and even delivered a 45-minute eulogy. Friends assisting in tidying his home stumbled upon photos of Dawn tucked away at the back of a closet, which seemed as if he wanted to discard them. Subsequently, Nick displayed a harsh and insensitive attitude, not just towards some church members, but also to neighbors and friends. Beyond maintaining multiple relationships with women from the congregation, Nick shockingly engaged in an intimate relationship with Diana, Dawn's own mother, under the pretense of mourning as a widower. Nick's behavior had become intolerable even for Pastor Robert, resulting in Nick being asked to depart from Christ Community Church. This expulsion proved to be a significant blow to Nick, marking the outset of his escalating troubles. On April 10, 2001, Sandy, accompanied by her lawyer, met with the county district attorney and received an immunity offer in exchange for her testimony regarding a long-held secret dating back to the morning of December 26, 1997. According to Sandy, on the morning of Dawn's demise, Nick allegedly contacted her and confessed, saying, "I did it." However, their conversation was abruptly interrupted by another incoming call on Sandy's phone. Putting Nick on hold to answer the call from somebody from the church who informed her about Dawn's incident, Sandy later returned to her conversation with Nick, seeking clarification on what he meant. But Nick only reiterated, "It's done, it's done." Sandy refrained from pressing for more details about the call for several weeks afterward. Eventually, when Sandy confronted Nick, he confessed to administering a substantial overdose of Benadryl to Dawn and suffocating her by placing a plastic bag over her face. The heartbreaking aspect is that Dawn remained partially conscious, witnessing her husband suffocating her through the plastic bag. After ensuring she was no longer alive, he strategically arranged old newspapers and wrapping paper around the room, positioning them beneath her body, and positioned the propane tanks near the bed. He arranged the heater too in a way that it would start a fire, intending to obliterate any evidence of a crime, and instead staged the incident as an accidental fire. Dawn's autopsy findings indicated an absence of soot or carbon monoxide in her lungs and blood. The pathologist in charge of Dawn's examination attributed her death to an accidental fire and overlooked crucial evidence regarding carbon monoxide's adherence to red blood cells. This oversight led them to conclude, given Dawn was a pastor's wife, foul play wasn't involved, neglecting to convey that carbon monoxide attaches to red blood cells, implicating the absence of breathing during the incident. Despite an overdose of 5 times the normal amount of Benadryl, it was deemed insufficient to cause respiratory failure. The pathologist dismissed the possibility, suggesting Dawn, even in a drowsy state, would have reacted to the rising heat. Notably, crime scene photos revealed newspapers beneath Dawn's body, an unsettling detail that went largely unnoticed. While a fire marshal raised suspicions and conversed with the police, the ultimate decision regarding the accidental nature of Dawn's death didn't fall within his jurisdiction. Nick was arrested on September 12, 2001 at a Kinko's parking lot, where he staunchly denied any involvement in Dawn's death, attributing his arrest to the church's attempts at sabotage. Despite his assertions that the church members could inflict substantial harm, Nick faced first-degree murder charges with bail set at $750,000. Sandy's narrative, as conveyed to investigators, appeared bizarre, adding to the frustration stemming from the nearly 4-year delay in considering Nick as a suspect or making an arrest. Her reason for cooperating was equally exasperating, driven by anger over Nick's involvement with other women from the church and feeling exploited. According to Sandy, at that point she concluded that God disapproved of their relationship, consequently implying that Dawn's murder was against divine will as well. Church members, when questioned, recounted Nick's peculiar behaviors and inappropriate relationships, expressing dismay over his failure to even purchase a headstone for Dawn's grave following the life insurance payout. On September 17, 2001, Nick appeared before a judge and entered a plea of not guilty. He asserted that his church had cast a curse upon him, alleging that Pastor Robert possessed a malevolent influence far darker than comprehensible by the police. Nick's trial commenced, prompting a modification in the charges due to the prosecutor's doubts regarding the judge's inclination toward the death penalty, initially sought with the charge of first-degree murder. The charges were amended to aggravated first-degree murder, carrying a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The alteration in charges stemmed from the arson Nick had committed, enabling this revised charge. Witnesses, including the women who were involved with Nick and various church members who had undergone counseling with him, provided testimonies that illuminated Nick's conduct to the jury. These accounts shed light on the significant influence wielded by the church in their lives. They detailed experiences of purported visions and direct messages believed to be from God, exploited by Nick for rationalization and manipulation. Smith's daughter testified, recounting her introduction to Nick through her father and how Nick had groomed her during her teenage years. Their sexual involvement ensued shortly after Dawn's death and persisted until she eventually relocated about a year later. Doctors and forensic experts also testified, emphasizing that Dawn's body held vital clues regarding the events of that day. However, these indicators were overlooked, as mentioned earlier, due to Nick's status as a pastor, despite the abnormal absence of soot and carbon monoxide for someone who was alive and breathing during a fire. The defense vehemently contested these allegations, focusing efforts on framing Sandy as the jealous, vengeful ex-partner, fabricating accusations upon discovering Nick's infidelity with various women. Nonetheless, on December 26, 2002, 5 years post-Dawn's tragic demise, the jury deliberated for a mere day before delivering a guilty verdict for aggravated first-degree murder against Nick. During the subsequent sentencing on February 7, 2003, Nick addressed the courtroom, comprising Dawn's friends and family, vehemently maintaining his innocence while expressing remorse for his actions and expressing sorrow over their loss, acknowledging Dawn deserved better. Nick received a life sentence. However, in 2007, an appeal to the state Supreme Court led to a revision of his life sentence. The appeal contended that since Dawn had already perished due to Nick suffocating her, the original charge of aggravated first-degree murder, pertaining to death by arson, didn't align with her actual cause of death. The defense argued that Nick therefore didn't deserve a life sentence. Ultimately, the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of the appeal, altering Nick's sentence to 26 years in prison. While in prison, Nick has actively supported educational initiatives and co-founded the Environmental Advancement Reintegration Network. He initiated a waste management system, employing worm composting, and even delivered a TED Talk centered on sustainability. Unfortunately, it is indicated that he will become eligible for parole in 2025 and could potentially be released soon. Dawn, gone soon, but not forgotten. Unfortunately, the life she had pictured with whom she believed was the one didn't turn out to be the actual reality, and sadly, in the process, led to the ultimate betrayal and her heartbreaking and untimely demise. Our heartfelt prayers and thoughts extend to her departed soul and the loved ones she left behind. On the fateful date of November 14, 1997, the vibrant life of 14-year-old Rena Verk met a heartbreaking and tragic end when a group of her peers lured her to a party. Ensnared by her peers under the guise of a party, little did she know that the festivity was a fabricated ruse concealing a sinister plot against her. As the night unfolded, her absence raised concern among her family, triggering an unsettling realization that she hadn't returned home, and no one could account for her departure from the ill-fated gathering. They reported her missing, but initially, the police did little to locate her due to her history as a runaway, and her past troublesome behaviors. Tragically, her lifeless body was eventually discovered, and the dark truth behind her death would be uncovered by the investigators. This is the tragic case of Rena Verk. Rena Verk was born on March 10, 1983 in Saanich, a district municipality on Vancouver Island in British Columbia in Canada. She came from an extended family that traced its roots back to India. Rena's mother, Suman, hailed from an Indo-Canadian family, whereas her father, Manjit, was an immigrant from India. Rena's parents underwent a conversion from Hinduism and started embracing the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses despite being in the Saanich community, where Sikhism was prevalent among Indo-Canadians. Growing up, Rena grappled with the persistent awareness of her outsider status, yearning for acceptance from her peers. Unfortunately, she became a target of relentless bullying due to her unconventional appearance and ethnic background. In a predominantly white school, her non-mainstream looks, coupled with being overweight and having brown skin, set her apart. Adding to her challenges, Rena faced the weight of adhering to her parents' strict religious principles, a stark contrast to her peers who were beginning to explore newfound freedom from their parental control. Concerns heightened when her parents discovered the prolonged bullying she endured since she started school, and suspected that it might have taken a toll on her mental well-being and that she was slipping into depression because of it. In May 1994, the family relocated, and this led to Rena transferring from Burnside Elementary School. Her parents hoped this relocation would put an end to the persistent bullying, and initially, it seemed to be working. Rena's spirits had been lifted, and she even forged a new friendship that brought her considerable joy. However, the positive turn took a downturn when the newfound friends shunned her and distanced themselves, reigniting the cycle of bullying. In 1996, Rena graduated from elementary school and started attending Colquitt's Middle School, where she met a new set of friends she deemed as the cool kids. This group defied curfews, indulged in alcohol and smoked as well, embodying the freedom Rena yearned for, a liberation from her strict parents and their religious regulations. Despite feeling embraced by her new circle, her parents disapproved, triggering a surge in rebellious behavior. In this turbulent phase, Rena's father, Manjit, recalled imparting a scripture to his daughter saying, "Bad associations spoil useful habits." In 1996, at the age of 13, Rena received some advice from a friend suggesting a way to leave her home. The friend proposed that she could enter foster care by informing the police of alleged physical assault. Acting on this advice, Rena reported her parents for assault, but no charges were filed due to insufficient evidence. Consequently, she was temporarily removed from her family and resided with her grandparents, who believed her account. Taking a troubling turn, Rena falsely accused her father of sexual assault, causing significant trauma to him. In 1997, her father faced arrest on charges of sexually assaulting Rena, leading to his incarceration, awaiting arraignment. Ultimately, her father's charges were dismissed when she confessed to fabricating the assault allegations. Expressing discomfort in her grandparents' home, Rena was now then relocated to the foster home where she wanted to go. There, she formed connections and began mimicking her newfound friends who often smoked, always discussed gangs, where she even falsely claimed to be affiliated with one. After a while, Rena realized that living in a foster home didn't meet her expectations, as she still had responsibilities and a curfew. Therefore, she apologized to her parents and returned home. Later on, she decided to leave her parents' house again, opting to stay in a youth shelter before eventually being placed in government care. Over the following months, she found herself caught in a cycle, moving between her parents' home, foster care, and youth shelters. This tumultuous relationship with her parents, social workers, and government officials portrayed the struggles of a bewildered teenager. Desiring acceptance and friendship, she viewed her strict religious upbringing and overprotective parents as uncool or culturally out of touch, and she seemed willing to go to great lengths to gain peer approval. Middle school marked the most confusing and emotionally draining period of her life. In his 2008 book, Rena, A Father's Story, Manjit Verk detailed the family's anguish in dealing with their daughter, expressing his belief that Rena manipulated social workers and family members alike. He lamented the lack of belief in their side of the story and the widespread acceptance of Rena's narratives. Yearning for acceptance from those who had previously rejected her, Rena eagerly sought their approval. The invitation to a party on November 14, 1997, likely stirred excitement in her as it presented an opportunity to socialize with the cool kids. The event took place during an overnight stay with her parents, initially behind a Saanich school, but later relocated to the nearby Craigflower Bridge after police intervention. Unfortunately, the party did not unfold as Rena had envisioned. At 10:40 p.m., just 20 minutes before her curfew, she reached out to her parents, notifying them that she was on her way home. Sadly, this phone call marked the last communication Rena's parents would have with her. At the Craigflower Bridge, a group of teenagers were smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol. Suddenly, several girls affiliated with a gang called the Shoreline Six targeted Rena. They subjected her to a brutal assault, physically beating her, placing a lit cigarette on her forehead, and even attempting to set her hair on fire. The attack persisted until one of the girls intervened and ordered the others to stop. Witnesses noted that the assault seemed unprovoked. After the initial attack was halted, Rena tried to escape and head home, but two teenagers, 15-year-old Kelly Ellard and 16-year-old Warren Glowatsky, pursued her. They dragged Rena to the other side of the Craigflower Bridge, where the violent onslaught continued with punches and kicks. Tragically, they held her head underwater until she succumbed to her injuries. Following her death, they removed her sweater and shoes, rolling her lifeless body into the water. Growing increasingly concerned as Rena's curfew passed by without her return, her parents initially speculated that she might have stayed at her grandparents' house for the night, but she wasn't there. She wasn't at the group home as well. They contacted one of Rena's friends, who revealed that she was still at the party when the friend left around 11 p.m. The next day, Rena's family reported her missing. However, the police response was slower due to her history as a runaway attributed to her past behavior. Rumors about a severe beating and a body found in the nearby gorge waterway circulated among the students at Colquitt's Middle School, attended by the teenagers involved. The members of the Shoreline Six group, aware of the situation, maintained a code of silence, vowing not to betray each other. Despite the prevalent rumors, an eyewitness eventually came forward to the police, stating that she had seen Kelly and Warren follow Rena after the beating. Surprisingly, a week passed before a police investigation was initiated after Rena was reported missing. Despite numerous witnesses and teachers hearing rumors about the incident, for some unknown reasons, none had reported the information to the police. Instead, it took a student coming forward as a witness to prompt police involvement. On November 21, 1997, Glowatsky and Ellard were arrested and charged with murder and aggravated assault. The members of the Shoreline Six faced aggravated assault charges, but their identities remained unknown and protected under Canada's Young Offenders Act. On November 22nd, a police helicopter flew over the Craigflower Bridge area, but no signs were observed until a ground search was conducted. The search revealed a body concealed in weeds, later identified as that of the missing teenager, Rena Verk. The forensic pathologist determined that drowning was the cause of death. Subsequent autopsy findings disclosed that Rena had sustained a significant injury, with head injuries severe enough to have been fatal even without drowning. At the time of her tragic demise, Rena was just 14 years old. In February 1998, the 6 girls involved in the initial attack on Rena were prosecuted in youth court, and as stated earlier, their identities remained shielded from the public. 3 of the girls admitted guilt to the charge of assault causing bodily harm, while the other 3 underwent a trial and were subsequently convicted of the same offense. Sentences varied, ranging from a 60-day conditional sentence to 1 year in jail. As for Ellard and Glowatsky, who were charged with Rena's murder, they faced a different legal process. Despite their ages, they were tried in adult court due to the severe nature of the crime. Warren Glowatsky had experienced a challenging upbringing marked by the absence of his alcoholic mother for a significant part of his life. Around the time of Rena's murder, he had found himself residing at a friend's house, following his father's departure from British Columbia to live in California without him. In April 1999, Glowatsky's trial commenced, and by June of the same year, he was found guilty of second-degree murder, resulting in a life sentence. As a minor at the time of the crime, he was eligible for parole after serving 7 years in prison. During his incarceration, Glowatsky discovered his Métis heritage, allowing him to involve tribal elders in his parole process. This process included various restorative justice measures involving meeting with Rena's family. In July 2006, he received unescorted temporary absences from jail and was ultimately released on full parole in June 2010. Rena's family did not oppose the parole request, as they believed Glowacki demonstrated genuine remorse for his actions. In stark contrast, Kelly Ellard hailed from a more stable and traditional family that provided support during the trial. She was 15 years old at the time of Rena's murder. Despite her lawyer's request to have her case tried in youth court, the Supreme Court of Canada rejected this plea due to the level of violence involved in the crime and an apparent lack of remorse. Initially convicted of second-degree murder in March 2000, her conviction was overturned in January 2003 on grounds of an unfair trial. Released on bail while awaiting her appeal, Ellard had served 18 months of her life sentence. However, during this period of release pending a new trial, she faced charges of assault causing bodily harm for beating a 58-year-old woman in a Vancouver park. Her bail was revoked, and she was returned to prison by March 2004. In June 2004, Kelly Ellard faced a new trial. Witnesses testified that she had bragged about being responsible for Rena's death. Glowacki asserted that he had witnessed Ellard drowning Rena, but Ellard's lawyer questioned Glowacki's credibility, highlighting alleged inconsistencies in his initial statements to the police and during the trial. Throughout her trial, Ellard admitted to assaulting Rena, claiming it was in defense of her friends as she thought that she was going to hurt them. However, she vehemently denied committing murder. She shifted blame, asserting that Glowacki and 2 other girls were the ones responsible for Rena's death. She expressed a resigned acceptance of an impending conviction, stating, "I'm obviously going to be convicted. You've got what you want. My life is ruined." Ellard showed no remorse for her actions and failed to disclose the motive behind the planned attack. After deliberating for 5 days, the jury reached an impasse, leading to a mistrial declared by the judge in July 2004 due to a deadlock among the jurors. In February 2005, Kelly Ellard faced a new trial, with Glowacki once again serving as the key witness. Glowacki reiterated his testimony, affirming that he and Ellard had assaulted Rena, leaving her lifeless in the water. On April 12, 2005, Ellard was convicted for the second time of second-degree murder and received a life sentence with no chance of parole for 7 years. However, in September 2008, the British Columbia Court of Appeal overturned Ellard's second-degree murder conviction, ordering a 4th trial on the grounds that the judge in her 3rd trial had provided incorrect instructions to the jury regarding the testimony presented in the case. This legal saga finally concluded in June 2009 when the Supreme Court of Canada upheld her conviction for second-degree murder, putting an end to the prolonged legal proceedings. In 2017, Ellard was granted day parole, and by 2019, she received additional privileges such as overnight leaves and extended day parole. The Parole Board of Canada approved the continuation of Ellard's day parole. This decision drew significant media attention on July 14, 2020, as Ellard, who had initially received a life sentence, was now serving time on day parole. During her time on parole, Ellard changed her name to Kerry Sim, started a family with her spouse, with the couple getting 2 children, and adhered to the conditions of her parole, including abstaining from alcohol and drugs and maintaining no contact with Rena's family. The lingering question all this time, however, revolved around the motive behind the teenagers deciding to beat up Rena and end up murdering her. One supposed reason was revenge. Rena had previously lived in a group home with 2 of the girls involved in the assault, who accused her of stealing her phone book and making calls while spreading rumors. Another girl claimed she harbored resentment towards Rena for allegedly stealing her boyfriend. In the year 2000, when Rena's parents initiated legal action against the teenagers involved, as well as the British Columbia government and other parties, Rena's father stated, "Society doesn't make people take responsibility for their actions. This is one way to make them responsible." In 2012, Rena's mother addressed her daughter's tragic death and the detrimental impact of bullying on young individuals. She shared, "For so long, we were consumed with the legalities of dealing with our murdered child, the courts prolonging the cases, and it's kind of like you put your feelings and your grief on hold. And I'm finding that now I'm feeling more of the impact of losing Rena, the emotions and feelings. So actually, I'm struggling more now and missing her more. I'm sad to say that the severity and the frequency of bullying are increasing instead of decreasing. And also, I think we're all shocked by the means that young people are using to bully their peers, with cyberbullying and texting, all these things that were not there when Rena was killed. The tragic murder of Rena sparked a nationwide conversation on racism and bullying, particularly committed by young girls to other young girls they didn't like. In the aftermath of their daughter's death, Rena's parents sought to channel something positive from the tragedy. They initiated various anti-bullying campaigns and inclusion programs and actively advocated for the implementation of anti-bullying measures in British Columbia schools. Their outreach extended to speaking about bullying to students, teachers, and law enforcement professionals. Through their persistent efforts, the government of British Columbia introduced an anti-bullying program in schools across the province. In recognition of their impactful advocacy, Rena's parents received a prestigious accolade in 2009. They were honored with the Anthony J. Hume Award of Distinction in British Columbia for their dedication to crime prevention and community safety efforts. It is sad and unfortunate what Rena Verk faced throughout her life up until her final moments. And while her actions were troublesome, it is somewhat understandable given the common teenage desire to try to fit in, which can have both positive and negative consequences. Despite the challenges, her family continued to love her, even in the aftermath of false accusations and heinous deeds attributed to them. Their love for her remained unwavering, as they always wanted the best for her. Our deepest sympathies go out to the life that was lost too soon, and the grieving loved ones she left behind. How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? Is arsenic detectable in autopsy? Top 5 undetectable poisons that show no signs of foul play. These are some of the haunting queries found in the Google search history of a dentist who allegedly murdered his wife in Aurora, Colorado that date back to February 27, 2023. Love, they say, has the power to transform and reveal the best in people and the dark side as well. For 45-year-old dentist James Craig, the dark side seemed to eclipse his 22-year marriage, ultimately leading to the poisoning of his lifelong partner, 43-year-old Angela Craig. This is the grim story of Angela and James Craig. James and Angela Craig, the couple who radiated perfection in the eyes of the public, appeared to have an impeccable marriage and a flawless family. Their story was a beacon of admiration for all. Their social media posts and James Craig's eloquent press release painted a vivid picture of his joyous matrimony to Angela, his partner in life, accompanied by their 6 children, and together they all reveled in the thrill of outdoor adventures, from camping and fishing to exhilarating snowboarding escapades, among others. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly flawless union, and as is often the case in any marriage, lay hidden complexities that bore its share of internal struggles. James, a compulsive gambler, worsened his financial woes with each ill-fated bet. Every attempt to turn his luck around only sent him spiraling deeper into the abyss of losses and debt. His fortune had also dwindled significantly, drained by dubious business ventures and ill-fated forays into the world of cryptocurrency, leaving him drowning in insurmountable debt. In a desperate bid for a quick fix, he had ventured to Las Vegas only to squander $2,000 in a futile attempt to reverse his fortunes. In a shocking revelation to her sister Toni, Angela disclosed that her husband James had driven his dental practice to the brink of ruin, forcing Angela to at times step in and help run the dental practice when James couldn't afford to hire additional staff. Their marriage was marred by James's infidelity with multiple women, and despite numerous attempts to break free, Angela found herself ensnared by his persuasive charm. The darkest chapter unfolded when James drugged Angela 5 or 6 years ago, confessing it was to prevent her from thwarting his attempt to take his own life. This harrowing incident would later play a pivotal role in the unfolding investigation, as evidenced by a series of revealing text messages presented later on in the video. Angela's recent visit to her sister in Utah from March 1st to March 5th painted a starkly different picture. She returned home after visiting her sister in Utah from March 1st to March 5th, radiating good health and positivity, a testament to her regular fitness regimen with not a single complaint to be heard. On March 6th, Angela's husband prepared her usual protein shake before their daily workout, a routine they both followed without issue. Little did she know that while she was away visiting her sister, James had been scouring the internet for lethal poisons, receiving a delivery of arsenic on March 4th. He clandestinely blended this deadly concoction into her protein shake, and as she sipped it, an unsettling dizziness and weakness overcame her. Angela sought help at Parker Adventist Hospital, where she was discharged the same day. Unaware of the dark truth, her family dismissed her condition as yet another bout of routine sinus infections, not realizing the sinister reality unfolding. On March 9th, she was readmitted to the hospital, her symptoms worsening, and the doctors remained baffled. Throughout this ordeal, James maintained contact with their close friends, Ryan and Michelle Redfern, who had no inkling of the dark secrets lurking beneath the surface. Ryan, not just a friend but a trusted business partner, had even lent a helping hand during James's financial struggles in a bid to salvage their dental practice. Michelle, drawing on her nursing background, frequently inquired about Angela's diagnosis, eager to unravel the mystery behind her illness and identify any potential oversights by the medical professionals. Initially, he brushed Michelle off, insisting that they had more than enough support. However, Michelle's persistence in checking on her friend led her to keep a close watch on Angela's progress through texts. He played the part of a concerned husband, sending updates when prompted, albeit with questionable messages and untimely jokes. Simultaneously, he engaged in text exchanges with his wife in the hospital, offering love while still maintaining an inappropriate sense of humor. Meanwhile, he led a double life, spending time with his secret lover, Karen Kane, a married orthodontist from Marble Falls in Texas. He had arranged for Karen to fly to Colorado from March 8th to March 10th, coinciding with the period his wife was hospitalized, all part of a sinister plan taking shape. This sinister plot was not a one-time occurrence. The orthodontist was scheduled to visit James for a second time from March 16th to 20, a flight ticket already purchased on March 4th. It appeared that this newfound love was the driving force behind James's desire to eliminate his wife from the equation. However, the lover seemed unaware of James's dark deeds despite knowing Angela was unwell and in the hospital. James, instead of displaying genuine concern and support for his ailing wife, sent ill-timed messages filled with desires rather than empathy. Angela, determined to recover, brushed off his advances, focusing on her health. Angela's ordeal took a darker turn when she was released on March 14th, only to be readmitted on March 15th, this time at University Hospital in Colorado, where she was taken by her brother Mark Prey, deepening the mysteries surrounding her illness. James informed the couple about Angela's deteriorating condition, prompting them to rush to the hospital separately from their different locations. In the midst of this, Ryan received a revealing call from the dental practice, uncovering the startling truth lurking behind closed doors. The information uncovered the origin of the sudden mysterious illness that had befallen Angela, who had also already started suspecting foul play. Confronted by Angela's accusations, James responded, "Given our history, I know that must be triggering. Just for the record, I didn't drug you." Back at the dental practice as well, Caitlin, the office manager, recalled a personal package that James had instructed her not to open. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place. The discovery unfolded in an unexpected way. Another employee unintentionally unsealed the package that was supposed to remain untouched. It was only a matter of time before Caitlin stumbled upon it, completely forgetting it was James's personal parcel, and peeked inside. She saw inside a biohazard labeled canister with the ominous words, potassium cyanide. On realizing the package was James's, she sealed and returned it to James, who seemed completely unaware of her actions. A Google search brought chilling revelations. Angela's symptoms perfectly aligned with the effects of potassium cyanide ingestion, including vomiting, low blood pressure, and nausea. Suspicion grew like a dark cloud, pointing squarely at James as the prime suspect in a sinister poisoning plot. Caitlin had also perhaps recalled their earlier conversations and pieced together a crucial detail. James told her that he had prepared a protein shake for Angela on the very day her illness began. This revelation deepened the web of suspicion surrounding him. Adding to the intrigue were James's peculiar behaviors, staying late at work on non-working days when no patients were scheduled and sneaking into exam room 9 at the end of the hallway and using a different computer while in the dark than the one in his personal office. The web of deceit was tightening around James, leaving Caitlin increasingly alarmed. At the time, Caitlin didn't dwell on it. James had also confided in her about Angela's accusations of poisoning, a revelation that left her deeply troubled. Sharing her concerns with her colleague Jacqueline set the wheels in motion. Jacqueline calls and promptly informs Ryan about the unsettling information. Ryan, deeply concerned, alerted a nurse about the suspicion that Angela might have been poisoned by her own husband using potassium cyanide. Following protocol, the nurse contacted the police, initiating a critical investigation. Tragically, by this point, Angela had been declared brain dead, and James received the devastating news that she would be taken off life support. It was at this juncture that Ryan and Michelle, now in the same car, began discussing the unfolding drama. The sinister plot had reached a critical juncture, and the truth was beginning to surface. In a tense and chilling moment, James made a call to Ryan, and with the phone being connected to the car's Bluetooth speaker, it ensured that they both heard every word. James confronted Ryan, aware that disturbing information had originated from him. Ryan admitted to knowing about the secret package. James attempted to spin a tangled web of excuses, claiming the package held an engagement ring meant to surprise Angela. But Ryan saw through the deception, declaring he knew it contained potassium cyanide and demanding an explanation. Finally, James confessed that it was indeed potassium cyanide, but he concocted a disturbing tale. He alleged that Angela had asked him to obtain it, as she'd been grappling with suicidal thoughts ever since he'd requested a divorce in December 2022. He ordered the poison for her, believing it was a dangerous game of brinksmanship, describing the situation as a game of chicken, not realizing she'd actually consume it. Ryan urged James to stop talking and instead get himself a lawyer, but the die was cast. The Major Crimes Homicide Unit had already launched their investigation. The detective reached out to Child Protective Services caseworker Sydney Romero, who was deeply concerned about James's statements regarding Angela's supposed suicidal tendencies. Sydney found James's claims to be highly suspect as they conflicted with reality. He alleged that Angela had deliberately overdosed on opioids multiple times and claimed he had single-handedly revived her without reporting these incidents or seeking professional help. What made this even more dubious was that none of their children had any knowledge of these supposed events despite living under the same roof. Sydney had already previously met with James and the kids, giving her a clear perspective on the family dynamics. The absence of any mention of these incidents raised serious questions about who was weaving a web of deceit and deception. The truth was unraveling and the stakes were escalating. James, realizing he was sinking into a perilous abyss, desperately sought an ally in his dark hour. On the morning of March 16th, he dispatched a series of texts to Ryan, some of which contained the following words. James's desperation to manipulate his friend was palpable, but fortunately his ploy yielded no results. In his text, he even tried to place blame on his friend for the predicament of his kids who were unable to return to the comfort of their home as they had found the police awaiting them at the doorstep. The police, armed with a search warrant, demanded James's phone, Angela's phone, his wallet, and his laptop. He reluctantly handed them over, along with the passcodes. He informed them that his laptop was at the dental office. The police also photographed his credit cards, ID, and driver's license before returning them. Their search continued at James's residence, where they seized various items believed to be relevant to the case. These included assorted protein powders, workout-style shakers, a computer tablet, 2 unmarked bags containing white powdery substances, and a water bottle discovered on the exercise bike in the main bedroom area. Notably, they failed to locate a hard drive that might have contained surveillance data from security cameras. The detectives then proceeded to James's workplace, where they secured his laptop and its password. Inside a small hand vacuum, they discovered a mysterious white substance, a portion of which was carefully collected and taken as evidence. They also retrieved a hard drive from the exam room 9 that James had used suspiciously. Delving deeper into the investigation, they accessed Angela's phone text messages, confirming her conversations with James. His contact was saved as the boy, with a picture of them, and the number matched the one provided by Ryan and Michelle. The most chilling discovery occurred when they connected the hard drive to a television, revealing James's alarming Google search history. It included the creation of a new email account to conduct searches such as how many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human, which led to a website detailing lethal doses. They also found a search related to whether arsenic is detectable in an autopsy, originating from the Carlson Company. In James's YouTube search history, a series of unsettling titles emerged, including Top 5 Undetectable Poisons That Show No Signs of Foul Play, How to Make Poison, and Top 10 Deadliest Plants, in brackets, They Can Kill You. The investigation had taken a dark and disturbing turn, unveiling a web of sinister research and unsettling intentions. Further chilling revelations emerged as the investigation deepened. James's searches included oleandrin, along with inquiries on how to create poison from oleander, and even a Google search on acquiring oleander. Disturbingly, he had purchased $330 worth of this deadly plant, but law enforcement had intervened, seizing the package during its delivery. As detectives combed through his emails, they uncovered correspondence with Cassie Rodriguez, an employee of Midland Scientific. This was the same company from which he had procured the potassium cyanide. James had persistently inquired about his delayed order, citing medical use, and provided credentials, which the company had eventually approved. His impatience was palpable as he desperately sought the dangerous substance to expedite his sinister plan. The investigation uncovered that James had been poisoning Angela even during her hospital stay, all while pretending to care for her. In a shocking twist, an email from his mistress lover hinted that he had shared a foreboding secret about Angela's condition. She consoled James, believing Angela was succumbing to natural causes. She expressed profound sympathy, wishing she could help him instead of pulling him away. She acknowledged the immense difficulty he must be facing and offered her presence. However, she drew the line at pretending to be just a friend when there was clearly something more between them. Tragically, on March 18, 2023, Angela passed away, leaving behind their 6 children. Suspicion deepened as James refused an autopsy, a move that only intensified the cloud of guilt hanging over him. If he were truly innocent and genuinely concerned, one would expect a desire to uncover the mysterious cause of his wife's death. The next morning, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in the tragic case of Angela Craig. The shocking climax to this dark tale was now in full view. On March 23, 2023, James made a solemn entrance into the courtroom. He appeared with his head lowered, hands in cuffs and ankles restrained, clad in the unmistakable orange jumpsuit of the Arapahoe County Detention Center. His gaze avoided the eyes of family and friends present, and he entered a plea of not guilty. As of October 2023, James Craig appeared in Arapahoe County Court and again pleaded not guilty, with his trial being set for April 19, 2024. The jury trial will run across 3 weeks in the spring of 2024. Angela's obituary celebrated her as a devoted, committed, and loving individual, showing unwavering loyalty to her children, family, and friends. Remarkably, she remained loyal even to the man who had betrayed their love and ultimately led to her tragic end. If you found the video compelling, drop a like and subscribe to the channel and leave your thoughts in the comment.